special recognition for the person who has spent, literally probably thousands of hours over the course of the last year to make that. Where's Jen Battistoni? Is she in the room? Can you stand up, Jen? You got to stand up at this point. Yeah, all right. It is a big deal. It is a big deal from the standpoint of volunteer and from the effort that she gave. If you were a volunteer, whether it was yesterday or over the course of the last 8 months, you may have helped spread the word somehow. You got flyers in bags of other races. If you volunteered in any way to make this thing a go, would you stand up a second? I know there's more than zero. Okay, good. If you volunteer in some way, so keep standing. No, don't sit down. We do this for a purpose. I don't do it just to make you feel good. I want everybody else to realize this is how we do it. This is how we do it. This is how the kingdom happens. The kingdom never happens in theory. It happens in practice, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. God always motivates hearts so that hands move. That's what he's always doing. And so I want to thank you. You all are commended because and there's something in heaven for you because of that effort. So thank you guys so much for your effort. Okay, so I'm bragging you up. Now I want to brag the deal up, all right? This is the God gets glory, but also Grace Fellowship Church making a difference. We, as of yesterday, became the biggest 5K in Mokena history. Okay, that's a big deal. It's a little, maybe that stays on earth, but it stays in here. So Jen Battistoni and I know what that means. We had 265 people pay to run in the cold. They paid us money so they could run in the bitter cold. We had volunteers show up so early. I tell you what, when you're really serving Jesus hard, when the time you have to show up, 7, is about the same as the wind chill factor. And that's what was going on yesterday. You showed up and did something good, and there's going to be probably someone in the neighborhood of $5,000 that's going to go someplace really great. And that's just the beginning. That was our first go at it, and we are absolutely ecstatic about it. Yesterday was a huge win. And so whatever way, how many of you guys ran in that? Stand up, you ran in this thing yesterday. Your money and your hustle. Yeah. Did any of you guys win anything? How many of you guys, if you won, stay. I think you won the 80 and over group, didn't you, Pastor? That's a big deal. It is an absolutely big deal. And so we're hoping over the course of the next couple of weeks that we might be able to give you something from a standpoint of telling the story over video. If you weren't able to be a part of that day, we want to show that up for you. One sentence announcement. Make sure you're here next week. We're going to make a big announcement. That's one little thing. All right. That said, people come to know us most. People come to know us most by the things that we make a big deal about. What did you find out about Grace Fellowship Church today? If you walked in the first time today, what did you find out about today? We made a big deal just now about people who give themselves away for the purpose of the world being changed. People find out something really simple about us right off the bat. We make a big deal about those kind of things. If we are here simply for ourselves, then God, take us to heaven now, because we'll get to enjoy that for eternity. We are not here for ourselves. We're here to change the world, to have it transformed in the likeness of Christ, and that's hard work. And so hopefully you find that out. But people come to know us most by the things that we make a big deal about. People will either befriend me, oftentimes hassle me, because I have some things that it becomes pretty presently clear the kind of person that I am, who I'm about. Usually in a conversation, it will only take about 5 minutes to find out what kind of a guy I am. What I have in this is Jayhawks, by the way. The things that I have in my house, that I hang on my wall. I got a banner in my garage. All right, the things that we make a big deal about, it just naturally comes up in conversation. If it matters to you, it'll show up somehow. The things that you spend your hard-earned cash on. Guess what I spend my hard-earned money on? If I can get a chance to get my hand on tickets, guess who I'm spending it on? Right? The things that we rearrange our schedules to watch on TV, like I do the games. Whatever you rearrange your schedule around. The things that you talk to somebody about anytime, anywhere. It doesn't matter who they are or where it's at, what time it is. If that kind of a thing is what we're talking about. My birthday presents and my Christmas presents now over the course of the last probably 4 or 5 years all usually get coordinated. So if something about Kansas Jayhawks is either stamped on it or printed on the ticket, usually my presents for Christmas and my birthday somehow are a part of this guy right here. Before I should say this, through and through, my life growing up I've been a Kansas Jayhawk guy. Now, most of you probably already know that about me. How many of you guys already knew that about me? Like, I'm a Kansas guy, yeah. Every other sermon, I'm going to bring it up, right? Before my first puppy love, I loved the Jayhawks. Before my first major breakup, I loved the Jayhawks. Before I knew what a GPA was, all of my homework revolved around Kansas Jayhawk basketball. After I found out about what GPA was, it still did, right? When I went to college, after I graduated, this kind of stuff happened. Before I met my wife, before I had my first child, before my first job, I was a Kansas guy through and through. Now, this Jayhawk right here has traveled thousands and thousands of miles. He has been on every Kansas-esque trip I've ever been on. This bird has actually kissed the famous sports commentator, Dick Vitale. Dickie V, how many of you guys know Dickie V? This kissed Dick Vitale twice, right? 2 separate occasions. He's been all over the place. He's been a part of my Kansas experience for, I want to say, almost 20 years now. I've had him that long. I say that to reinforce a certain principle. It doesn't take you long to figure out what I'm into. People come to know us most by the things we make a big deal about. I want you to turn to the person next to you, if you would. Turn to the person next to you and tell them, if you had to answer the question, what is my Kansas Jayhawk? What do I make a big deal about? Or if someone were to ask people that knew you, what do you make a big deal about? What would they say about you? So you have 15 seconds each. Turn to the person next to you. What's your Kansas Jayhawk? What's your big deal? Okay, here's where you get to embarrass somebody. If the person next to you said something weird, raise your hand. What was the weirdest thing? You're not going to make confessions for them? You're in church, you're allowed to today. No, everybody's got something weird, probably. Everybody's got something different. Now, I can't possibly make an exhaustive list, but it probably has something to do with sports, or traveling, or microbrewing, or the way people keep their backyard and their flowers, or their cars. Whether they're a runner or a climber or a biker or not even more than a biker, a Harley guy, right? Maybe you're a Star Wars nerd. I know a couple. Or maybe you're a stamp collector, right? Everybody's got some little weird, quirky kind of thing. Something that they are annoyingly but admirably obsessive about. I introduced the topic this way because hopefully it didn't take long for you to say, well, this is my thing, when you told the people next to you. Because I want you to tap into that. The thing that you are, your Kansas Jayhawk, the thing that it doesn't take any time at all to transition a conversation about nuclear physics or about the news into, hey, did I mention I'm going to the Kansas game next? It doesn't take me any time at all to work from there to there. That thing, I want you to tap into that for a second. Because I want everyone to understand and feel that sense. Tap into that thing that has to become, at some point, tangible. At some point, the love for whatever it is turns into a weird bird that kisses Dick Vitale twice. All right? That thing, whatever that might be, I want you to tap into it because I want you to remember it as we're talking about what we're talking about today. Look in Joshua chapter 3. We are continuing our study called Breakthrough since the beginning of the fall. We've been working our way from Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, all books that people thought were boring, but they're filled with amazing stories, and we've worked our way into the book of Joshua. Now, I want to tell you, there's something that we probably won't spend as great a deal about time today talking about as we will over the course of the next few weeks. But all the promises of the book of Genesis, I'm going to get you into the promised land. The breakthrough from being outside the land of promise is getting ready to happen today. So I'm glad you showed up to church because this is a monumental moment in the history of the Bible, let alone the people of Israel, and certainly in our own lives. We're going to talk a little bit more about the significance of that promise being kept, but we're going to be talking about that very thing today. Joshua chapter 3 is where we start today. Verse 14. The people left their camp. So they're just to the east of the Jordan. They break their camp to cross the Jordan. And the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of them. It was their harvest season, and the Jordan was overflowing its banks. It wasn't a trickle. It was big. But as soon as the feet of the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant touched the water at the river's edge, The water above that point began backing up a great distance away at a town called Adam, which is near Zarethan. Ever been there? Okay. And the water below that point flowed to the Dead Sea until the riverbed was dry. So all the water on the north side, as they're moving from the east to the west, all the river to the north held up. Flowing, 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 stopping, and all the river to the south just cleared out. And all you see is dry riverbed. Then all the people crossed over near the town of Jericho. Meanwhile, the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Lord's Covenant stood on dry ground in the middle of the riverbed as the people passed by. They waited there until the whole nation of Israel had crossed the Jordan on dry ground. Chapter 4, verse 1. When all the people had crossed the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Now choose 12 men." Here's where we get to it. One from each tribe. "Tell them, take 12 stones from the very place where the priests are standing in the middle of the Jordan. Carry them out and pile them up at the place where you will camp tonight." So just on the west side of the Jordan. So Joshua called together the 12 men he had chosen, one from each of the tribes of Israel. He told them, "Go into the middle of the Jordan, in front of the ark of the Lord your God. Each of you must pick up one stone and carry it out on your shoulder." 12 stones in all. One for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. "We will use these stones to build a" what? "A memorial. In the future, your children will ask you, 'What do these stones mean? What's this about?' Tell us the story. Then you can tell them, 'They remind us that the Jordan River stopped flowing when the Ark of the Lord's Covenant went across. These stones will stand as a memorial among the people of Israel forever.'" Many of us have probably read or heard this story before, if we've known even just a little bit about Israelite history. God wanted an exclamation point. Right at the end, the conclusion of the wilderness wanderings. They had been spending 40 years now wandering around the desert. They had been 400 plus years in Egypt. And at the conclusion of all that, the promise being kept, he wanted a conclusion of that as he was bringing his people into the land of promise, the promised land. A lot of times we think of it as like an actual place name, but it's an idea. The land of promise means God's fulfilling something. He had promised to Abraham, "I'm going to bring you in here. I'm going to get you onto a platform so I can perform a promise of blessing to you and to the whole world, and I'm getting you across." The land of promise is being fulfilled there. And he wants an exclamation point by way of a miracle. A miracle very much like the wanderings began at the parting of the Red Sea. Very much like when they left Egypt, now when they're going into the land of Canaan, it's going to be the same exact thing. So he parts these waters, and Israel walks through on dry ground. But this experience of the miracle was not the only thing that Yahweh wanted them to know, to remember, to feel. One thing that they failed to do once the waters were parted on the Red Sea was to do this next thing that he commands them, almost as if this experience could not be untangled from the other. The parting of the Jordan River would be directly connected to the stacking of 12 stones. He wanted this definitive moment to be monumental, literally. I want you to mark a moment so that when something happens and you've forgotten, or your kids ask the question, or your grandkids, I want you to be able to tell them the story about me. He just never wanted these things to be unentangled from one another. This word, this idea of a memorial, it's zikaron. It's an interesting word. It means a physical reminder that brings about a remembrance. Anybody ever smelled something that reminded you of your wife, who was your girlfriend before? You smell an envelope, a love letter. Anybody ever hear a song? Anybody ever wear a wedding ring? These are all zikarons. These are a remembrance of something that's happened, and it elicits this response that happens inside of us. Every time you see it, touch it, hear it, smell it, it is an instant memory or an instant explanation of an experience or emotion. That's what comes up out of it. We all have zikarons. They're the memories that we keep of the most lasting moments, the memories we keep of the most important things to us. They're the pictures that we keep in our wallet. I don't know if anybody keeps pictures in wallets anymore. We all keep them on our phones, right? But the same idea, the things we hang on our walls, the trophies that we keep on our dresser. I still have mine from 1980 when I was a grasshopper. I was a grasshopper all-star. We keep those kind of things on our dresser. We want to remember those things. Those are definitive moments for us, right? The ring that we wear on our finger, the clothes and the colors that we wear. Let me show you a few things of my zikarons. This is what they know on earth as a rock. This rock has special value to me and to my son right here. This rock here memorializes me and my eldest son's first hike up the 12,300-foot elevation of Flat Top Mountain. We had a lot of experiences go up there. It was the first time he took a hike, especially at that level. It was the first time he and I had a hike like that together. So I memorialize it with this rock. It sits on my desk. I always think of that experience and the little marmot that we fed lunch to that day. It's something that's special between him and me. It's just a rock to you. It means something to me and to him. These, let me zip this out. I'm going to show you something else that's really cool to me. These are the tickets to me and my son Cameron, my second son, the first time he ever went to a Kansas basketball game. I've got these. Kansas was number 1 ranked, and it was a very close end, and they won. So that's a zikaron to me. It's a memory. It's an experience I have with him. Give me that next picture. This is a picture of my daughter. So every once in a while, we like to go on what we call a dad and daughter dilly date, which is just there's the only way I could say silly with a D, and so that's why it's a dad and daughter dilly date. But that's something only she and I have. And this is a picture that I'm reminded of her drinking something very weird while we're driving down the road. This is a memory. It's a physical memory. Let me know what these are. This is a zikaron of mine as well. I've held on to these for almost 16 years. These are the tickets, the airline tickets that I bought. My wife did not know we were going to go on our honeymoon. She asked, what do I wear? Because we got married in March. And she's like, what am I supposed to wear? And I said, everything. So she had to pack twice the size. And here it says the last time ever printed on anything is Julie Battistoni. It's the last time she was Battistoni. Now she's a Moreland. And this reminds me of that experience when I flew her the night of our wedding day to San Francisco, and then I took her to Monterey, and we had a wonderful time. This is a zikaron of that. Nobody else gets this. It's just paper to most people. It's just an airline ticket. We've all thrown them away. But it means something to me and to her. Well, maybe more to me, I guess, at some point. She's rolling her eyes. So we all have our own zikarons, right? Okay, I get it, John. Right. You don't throw things away. What's the point? The point is we make a big deal about the stuff that matters to us. We mark those moments somehow with something physical, something tangible. That's why almost every wedding in our culture today ends with them putting a ring on each other's finger. Why? Who came up with that? That hasn't existed forever. Where did that come from? Somebody just said, we need to mark this moment. And that's what's happened. Something that can be felt or smelled even, something that can be heard, something that can be gazed at, like a picture, something that can even be tested. I mean, think about this. We even save cake, the cake that we have at our wedding day, we even save it for a year so that we can taste the memory of being married. Was anybody else's dry as well, by the way, when it was just ours? We even want to taste our memories. We do that kind of thing. Why? Because we make a big deal about the things that matter the most to us. So taking it in, what pile of rocks stands as a testimony to your relationship with God? Literally, what tangibly is left? What's there to point to brag about, to immediately bring the conversation, wherever it may be, with whomever it may be? I want to talk about the pile of rocks. I want to talk about these tickets. I want to tell you about this. I want to tell you about this Kansas game where they won 57-55, and it was with Cameron, and I had a really bad toothache that day in St. Louis, and I want to tell you the whole story. Why? Because Cameron means the world to me, and so does Kansas. And so I want to combine them two together. I want to tell you about the whole story of my zikarons. We make a big deal. What physical representation, literally what stands today that shows you have a big deal relationship with God? What stands as undeniable testimony that he saved you and you serve him? Is there something on earth that you could point to and say, let me show you this picture. Let me explain to you this rock I have. What will your children and grandchildren one day stumble upon? Those of you who are older, maybe this question makes more sense to. Those who would think about what happens when we're no longer here, when we've passed into eternity, whatever it might be, conceptually, I want you to try to grab a hold of this. What will your children and your grandchildren stumble upon one day in your bedroom dresser drawer or in your attic when they're packing your things up and they're remembering you and they did not realize or they had forgotten about and they stumble upon that thing that describe your strong and abiding relationship with God? Do you have something that actually shows up? Would anyone, if people that did not know you landed in your house, would they know the difference? If people landed at work that did not know you, would they know that you're a Christ follower, that you are a faithful and strong Christ follower, that if there's a conversation that we could steer it, we would end up talking about God somehow? Do people know that? Would people see that? Would they feel that? Maybe pictures of you and the little kids that you taught in the pre-elementary Sunday school class. Do you have anything like that? Maybe your Grace to the Finish 5K running shirt, right? That you half ran, half walked. And a little bit of donation of money and a little bit of sweat involved to make a difference for something good. Maybe if they went into your attic or into your things, into your library, they'd find a journal book of your faith that you wrote down as you went through challenges. Maybe it's a worn-out Bible. Maybe it's 10 worn-out Bibles that they would find. A VBS volunteer shirt. For 1 week, every summer, you put on your T-shirt and you go crazy and you make a difference, and kids' eternities are blown up because you just were a little crazy. You gave a little time. Maybe it's a before and after picture of the carpet that was and the carpet you donated funds to have. And this is a hint, hint. A before and after picture. This is what it was before. A little bit of money that really could have, I could have wasted in a lot of different ways. And here I'm making a difference so people feel comfortable in the house of God. Maybe it's a program, like a sheet of paper, of a Christmas program that you played a role in, to sing or to proclaim, to act out, whatever it might be, to talk about the love of God at Christmas time. Maybe it's just that little program they're like, oh, I didn't know in 2013 Grandma did that. Tell me that story. Maybe it's a memento that you get from serving a pastor. Maybe some of you have been on missions trips. Some of you are getting ready to go to Guatemala, and you get a memento of how you served a pastor or a person in that church or somebody in that community, and you brought that memento back, and it's worth pennies in reality, but in eternity it matters a whole lot to you. And they stumble upon that. Let's put it this way as we finish. It's probably only substantial to us and to others if it's left something physical to show for it. I want to repeat that because I don't want you to leave here thinking that it's possible that anything that really matters just stays inside of the heart. It is probably only substantial to us and to other people if somehow it shows up in the real world. A better way to ask a question is about what you make a big deal about spiritually is this: how has your spirituality become physical? How is what's happening in here turning into reality? That it's not just a theory, or it's not just a thing that you look, whenever we do this, because we do this almost every single week now, because that's how much eternal stuff is going on. Almost every single week we're going to have somebody stand and say, thank you for serving yourself. At some point, if you've seen enough people standing up, and you're here almost every other Sunday or every Sunday, and you're watching other people stand up, at some point you need to say to yourself, why am I not standing up? Not for glory, but for the joy of it. This is what I'm supposed to be. This is what God made me to do. And at some point, I'm going to stand up. There's a memorial. There's something that's changed because I got my hands on it. At some point, you need to ask yourself that question. When will be the time that I'm going to stand up? Well, I'm going to ask a question. Those of you who still have a hold of that Bible passage that we just read. Who, in this breakthrough story today, who demanded that there be a big pile of rocks stacked up on the west side of the Jordan? Who commanded to do that? God did. Does God need another pile of rocks? He's got a gigantic one. It's called Earth. Does he need the rocks? No, of course he doesn't. He knows that we do. He knows that we need to physically do those kind of things because we're simple. When it comes down to it, at a soul level, we're simple. He knows that we need it because he made us that way. He knew that after time, even miracles fade. But I tell you, if we haven't learned anything over the 40 years of wilderness wandering history that we've spent over the course of the last year and a half talking about in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and then now into Joshua, if we have not learned anything, we've realized this, that even the best of people will forget about miracles. He's like, you know what? You're going to forget about this water being parted, or the next generation, they're not going to buy it. He's like, make sure you leave a pile of rocks. If you go through the story, this is what the cool part of it is. If you continue on in the story, he says, not only bring the stack of rocks right here along the banks for when you and your kids come out, but when they come back every spring or every summer, whatever it might be, and you're talking to your kids and your grandkids about, let me tell you about the story about these rocks. But oh wait, hold on. Look at that one. Because what he told them to do is stick 12 more rocks right in the middle of the river. Because what would no longer be held up once they crossed through? The river. And they're like, well, how'd those rocks get there? It takes a miracle. He knows that miracles fade in our memory. We have to have things that remind us of that. The things that are really a big deal. You see, God never moves our hearts without the intention of mobilizing our hands. Something has to go from here to here, here to here. If it does not get to here, it did not happen here. It did not happen here if it does not get to here. I can quote you 1 million Bible verses to prove it. You don't need it because you know it naturally. Just like I do. What's your Kansas, your pile of rocks, your zikaron to the world and to the generations that God is faithful, and so too will you be? What is your zikaron or zikarons? Maybe you're hitting that time in life where you realize you should be making a big deal about your relationship with God. It may be at the very beginning. You've heard it in very simple ways today when you walk into church. Jesus Christ is the Savior of broken people, and I am one. I need to be forgiven. I need to have a restored relationship to God. Please forgive me, God. That's the beginning of the relationship. That's moving from the east side of the Jordan over to the west. I believe. I receive that. That's a huge one. That's a miracle. And maybe you're at that place. This part of the decision is invisible. It's faith. It has to start here, and it's going to turn out to these other places. Maybe you're a little bit further along the way. You're a little bit further west from the Jordan River at this point in your life, but you've realized that there's not much to show for your faith, your spirituality. It's been more conceptual. It was exciting over there right after the miracle happened, but the memories have faded. I would encourage you to go back to the point of forgiveness. Go back to the river. Remember the rocks. Remember the miracle in the middle of that river, and say, you know what? I tell you what. I've got to make a new memorial. I got to have something new. I got to do something different. If that's you, please be triggered. There should be a day. Lord, please help us. There should be a day when every single person would stand. That there would be a question and every one of us stood that day. Soak that in for a second. Because guess what? We're going to probably be sitting in the same section in heaven. I would love to be able to say, God, we did it right. We tried to do our best. We're broken, we're sinners, but God, when we realized, you brought us across that Jordan River as a church, we did our best. And we're sitting in